𝗲𝗲 الحمد لله رب العالمين اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. I ask Allah Ta'ala to grant us all the sincere intention and the good comprehension. Allahumma ameen. We spoke yesterday about Allah the Exalted, and that Allah the Exalted is not like the creation. We mentioned that God is not a physical light like some people claim and like some people tend to think. Some people actually believe that God is a physical light. One of the reasons is that they misinterpret a verse from the Quran, which is Allahu nuru samawati wal-ard, and they take it literally to say that God is the light of the skies and the earth. But that's not what it means, of course, because we know that light is a creation. It's something that Allah created. How do we know that? Because Allah the Exalted said in the Quran, وَجَعَلَ الظُّلُمَاتِ وَالنُّورِ, which means, and Allah created darknesses and He created light. So we know that Allah does not resemble His creation, and so Allah is not a light. And so Allahu nuru samawati wal-ard, this verse has to have another meaning. It has to have another meaning. And we explained what that meaning was. We said that Ibn Abbas, this high-ranking companion of the Prophet, and he was one of the scholars of the companions, he gave the meaning of this verse. He said it means that Allah Ta'ala guides the inhabitants of the sky to the light of belief, and they are the angels, and that Allah guides the inhabitants of the earth to the light of belief, and the inhabitants of the earth are the humans and the jinn. So we know that Allah Ta'ala is not a light. Allah Ta'ala is not a roshni, as we mentioned, which we said in Urdu, Hindi, Bengali, and Persian, they use this word to say that Allah is a physical light. And this is kufr, blasphemy, and it takes the person out of Islam. We also elaborated that Allah Ta'ala is not a body. Allah is not something that has a size or a dimension. Allah is not something that has a picture or an image or something that takes up space. And that's why the minds cannot imagine God, because He's not something that can be imagined. He's not something that the mind can grasp, because He has no image, He has no shape, He has no color. And He exists without a place. And we mentioned that Allah is neither a palpable body, like something that you can grab, like a human or a tree, and He is not an impalpable body, something that you cannot grab hold of, like what? Like the light, or like the air, for example, or like the soul. And we also mentioned that Allah Ta'ala created the kursi, and it is a huge creation that exists in the upper world. And we mentioned that Allah never revealed that He created it to sit on it. Neither the kursi nor the arsh. And they are two different creations the Arsh is way bigger than the Kursi. So to continue from there, Allah the Exalted informed us that He does not resemble anything whatsoever. He does not resemble any created being. And the dense bodies, Allah does not resemble them. So He is not a dense body, yani something that one can take hold of. And the subtle bodies, Allah does not resemble those. We mentioned like light or air. And so Allah is not a subtle body or an impalpable body. And this verse that we will mention is the greatest verse in the Quran regarding declaring the transcendence of Allah. Meaning, it is the clearest and greatest verse in the Quran in clarifying that Allah does not resemble the creation in any way whatsoever. And it is verse 11 of Surah Ash-Shura, where Allah the Exalted revealed, laysa kamithlihi shay', which means there is nothing like Him in any way whatsoever. Therefore, my brothers and sisters, a believer must believe that Allah does not resemble us. Every believer has this in their heart. They know, they believe that Allah does not resemble us. Otherwise, they wouldn't be believers. And like we said, this verse, laysa kamithlihi shay', is amongst the clear, unambiguous verses clearing Allah the Exalted from resembling the creation. And no two Muslims would differ that this verse negates any resemblance between Allah and His creation. Yani every Muslim knows that this verse clears God from resembling what He created. So Allah is not like us, and there is nothing that resembles Him in any way whatsoever. If all people acknowledge that this verse, in which Allah attributed to Himself non-resemblance to the creation, indicates that Allah does not resemble anything in any way, if the people acknowledge that, then everyone must also acknowledge that Allah Ta'ala is not a dense body because He does not resemble the dense bodies, and He is not a subtle body, an intangible body, because He has informed us that He does not resemble bodies at all. And so, He doesn't resemble anything whatsoever. Allah informed us that He does not resemble anything. So neither do the tangible bodies resemble Him, nor do the intangible bodies resemble Allah. Allah is not a body at all. Allah the Exalted, the Creator of everything, exists and is not like anything else that exists. He exists without a place and without a direction. Because Allah the Exalted was existing before the existence of place. Isn't that the case? Of course. And He existed before place existed without a place. Allah existed before all places. He existed before this entire world. So it is not permissible to say that He resides in this world, or that He is in a place, or that He is in the sky, or that He is on the earth somewhere. A'udhu billah. We seek refuge in Allah. Nor is it permissible to say that He is contained in every place. A person cannot say Allah is everywhere, and they mean physically. Of course not. A'udhu billah. Allah exists without a place. He is not inside of this world. He created it. He existed before it, without it. And He does not change. Change doesn't happen to Allah, and it doesn't happen to His attributes. And so after creating everything Allah created, like this world, and place, and directions, and the heavens, the skies, and so on, Allah is as He always was, without a place, without a direction, without being in need of anything from His creation. Whatever occupies a place is in need of that place. And Allah the Exalted said in the Quran, in Surah Al-Imran, إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَغَنِيٌّ عَنِ الْعَالَمِينَ. This ayah means, indeed, Allah does not need any of the creations or their worship. So Allah is not in need of the skies. Allah is not in need of the earth. Allah is not in need of the Arush or the Kursi or the prophets or any other creation. Allah is not in need of anything. So the one who does not need this world, how could He reside in it? How could He be, as they claim, living inside of it? A'udhu billah. How could it be that Allah would be sitting on the Arush? The Arush is part of His creation. Believing that Allah is in a place, or that Allah sits on the Arush, or that Allah resides in the skies, or like those who believe that Allah resides in the masjids. Some people actually think that. They think that the Muslims go to the masjid often because God lives inside of the masjid. A'udhu billah. Or like those who believe that God is inside of the Kaaba. There are people that actually believe that God is inside of the Kaaba, and that's why the Muslims circumambulate the Kaaba. A'udhu billah. Very strange beliefs that some people have. Or that Allah is contained within all places, or in all things, or that He is within this world, or that He is the world itself, as some ignorant people believe. May Allah protect us. All of these are forms of kufr. They are forms of blasphemy. Yani, these are all examples of creedal kufr. Beliefs that take the person out of al-Islam. We seek refuge in Allah Ta'ala. As for the second type of kufr, so we were first explaining the beliefs that take the person out of Islam. We also mentioned that there are doings that if one does one of them, this would invalidate their belief. And there are sayings, and there places the tongue. If one says any of them, then they would apostatize from al-Islam. May Allah Ta'ala protect us. So as for the second type of kufr, disbelief, that which takes the person out of the religion of Islam, it is physical kufr, which occurs through actions, such as the one who prostrates to an idol. May Allah protect us. Or if one prostrates to Satan, Iblis, the grandfather or the forefather, if you want, of the jinn. Or if one prostrates to a cow, or prostrates to anything else that is worshipped besides God. So whoever prostrates to anything, makes sujood to anything that is taken as an object of worship besides Allah, then this person has committed kufr. The one who prostrates to the sun, we don't say about him he's a Muslim, we say he's a non-Muslim. The one who prostrates to a grave, for example, if he goes to a grave and he prostrates to it, we say about him that he's a non-Muslim. Even if he was a Muslim before doing that, by doing that deed, he has invalidated his belief. This person has prostrated to something that is worshipped besides God. Likewise, whoever prostrates to a human being as an act of worship has also committed al-kufr. However, if one prostrates to a human being not as an act of worship, but as a form of greeting, then in this situation, he does not commit kufr. And that is because it was reported about our master 𝗲𝗪, may Allah raise his rank and benefit us by him. He was one of the companions of the Messenger of Allah, sallallahu alayhi wasallam. When he returned from the lands of Asham, and the lands of Asham, they include Palestine, Jordan, Lebanon, Syria, the Arish of Egypt, parts of Turkey, and parts of Iraq. These areas put together are called Asham. He was in the lands of Asham, and he came back. And when he saw the Messenger of Allah, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, what did Mu'adh do? He prostrated to the Prophet, sallallahu alayhi wasallam. His prostration to the Messenger of Allah was a prostration of greeting, not a prostration of worship. So the Messenger of Allah, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, said to him, "What are you doing?" So Mu'adh replied to the Prophet, "O Messenger of Allah, I saw the people of Asham prostrating to their patriarchs and bishops," meaning that at that time, the people of Asham, they were non-Muslims. And they used to prostrate to their leaders and their scholars. So the Prophet, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, upon hearing that, he said to him, "Do not do it." Meaning that in the legislation of Prophet Muhammad, in the religious law of the Prophet, alayhi salatu wassalam, it is not permissible for a person to prostrate to another person, even as a form of greeting. Now, as we said, if it was done as an act of worship, then this is clear that it is shirk. It is kufr, it is a type of shirk, polytheism, taking or worshipping other than Allah. And so, of course, the person who does that would not be a Muslim. However, if one prostrates to another human as a form of greeting, it's also not permissible. We say it's haram, it's forbidden, even though it was allowed in previous legislations. So in some of the previous laws, this was allowed. However, in the law of Muhammad 𝗲𝗪, this is not allowed. Amongst the types of physical kufr is throwing the mushaf into filth. We seek refuge in Allah. And the mushaf is the book of the Quran that was revealed to Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, and it is the greatest miracle of the Prophet, and it is existing today, as you know. Some people, and may Allah protect us, when they have a copy of the mushaf, of the book of the Quran, that has worn out, or its pages have yellowed, for example, they take this old copy and they throw it into the filth. a'udhu-billah. May Allah protect us from that. This here is an act of kufr. The one who does that is not a Muslim. It is not permissible to throw the mushaf in the filth. The mushaf is the book of Allah, and it must be honored and respected. Every page of it must be honored and respected. If a believer does not even touch the mushaf except in a state of purity, then think about that. Allah the Exalted said, لا يمسه إلا المطهرون. لا يمسه إلا المطهرون. This means that only the Muslims that are upon wudu can touch the mushaf. Only they can touch the book of the Quran. You can see that if a person takes the book of the Quran and throws it into the filth, why this would take the person out of Islam. It's a very, very grave sin. It's so grave that it invalidates the belief of the person. May Allah protect us. So Allah the Exalted, again, in veneration of this book, has forbidden us from touching it unless we are in a state of ritual purity, يعني upon al-wudu. So how can someone who claims to believe in Allah and claims to respect and revere the rights of Allah, rights, rights, meaning those things in the religion that have a high status, how can they claim this and then they go and throw the mushaf into the filth? This is belittling the book of Allah. And whoever belittles the book of Allah, the Quran, they have committed kufr, blasphemy. The third type is verbal kufr. And it is the most widespread form of blasphemy. May Allah protect us. That is why the Prophet ﷺ said, أكثر خطايا ابن آدم من لسانه. Most of the sins of the son of Adam are from his tongue. That's what that hadith means. Most of the sins that the humans commit are from their tongue. they are sins of the tongue. And the Prophet ﷺ was once advising our master Mu'adh ibn Jabal, may Allah raise his rank. And he said to him, وَهَلْ يَكُبُّ النَّاسِ فِي النَّارِ عَلَى وُجُوهِهِمْ أَوْ قَالَ عَلَى مَنَاخِرِهِمْ إِلَّا حَصَائِدُ أَلْسِنَتِهِمْ, which means, is there anything that topples people into the fire on their faces, or he said on their noses, other than the harvests of their tongues? Subhanallah. This means that most of those who enter hellfire do so because of their tongues. Therefore, a person should be cautious and should not speak except with knowledge that what he's saying or what she's saying is permissible to say. And this, dear brothers and sisters, it requires knowledge. Yani, how would the person know? How would the person ensure that what they're saying is permissible if they didn't learn? A person must learn the knowledge of the religion so that they can distinguish what is permitted to say from what is not. And when a person speaks without knowledge, his mistakes increase. And his mistakes, may Allah protect us, could include al-kufr, blasphemy, which could be a cause for him to enter hellfire eternally, meaning everlastingly. It could be a cause for him to enter the fire everlastingly, without an end. So one should not assume that ignorance is an excuse that prevents kufr from being attributed to him. No, don't assume, don't make that assumption. Some people think that if they utter words of blasphemy without knowing that those words are blasphemy, then they are not accountable for them. And that is incorrect. Because the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he told us what is different from that. What did the Prophet say in the hadith? He said, إِنَّ الْعَبْدَ لَيَتَكَلَّمُ بِالْكَلِمَةِ لَا يَرَى بِهَا بَأْسًا يَهْوِي بِهَا فِي النَّارِ 70 خَرِيفًا, which means a slave might utter a statement that he deems harmless. He doesn't even consider it harmful. Yet, because of it, he would fall into the fire for 70 years. 70 years he would be falling into hellfire. This hadith means that he said something that took him out of Islam. He didn't even know that it was harmful. And the Prophet clarified that for us. He said, indeed, a slave would say a statement that he sees nothing wrong with. He doesn't even know that it's haram. And in fact, it's not just haram, it's kufr. It's the biggest of haram. And it would result in his falling into hellfire, the depth of 70 years. We ask Allah to protect us from that. So the meaning of لا يرى بها بأسا, it means he does not think it will harm him. He doesn't think anything bad or harmful will happen by him saying that. He does not know that this word or this statement is a statement of kufr, and so he is unaware of its ruling. Yet despite that, what did the Prophet say? He falls into the fire for 70 years, meaning he descends into hellfire to the lowest depths of hell. A distance of 70 years. That's the lowest of hell. Yani that's to the bottom. It's a place that only a non-Muslim goes to, which means his statement actually took him out of Islam and he didn't even know. So it is understood that if a person speaks words of kufr, even if he was ignorant, he has still committed blasphemy. He has apostatized. He has invalidated his belief and left the religion of Islam. And so, as you can see, ignorance is not an excuse. Ignorance is not an excuse. And if you want a further evidence, then we mention what Allah the Exalted said in the Quran. Allah the Exalted revealed in Surah 𝗕𝗹𝘀, وَلَئِن سَأَلْتَهُمْ لَيَقُولُنَّ إِنَّمَا كُنَّا نَخُوضُ وَنَلْعَبُ قُلْ أَبِاللَّهِ وَآيَاتِهِ وَرَسُولِهِ كُنْتُمْ تَسْتَهْزِئُونَ لَا تَعْتَذِرُوا قَدْ كَفَرْتُمْ بَعْدَ إِيمَانِكُمْ. Which means, if you ask them, O Muhammad, they will surely say, we were only conversing and playing. We were only playing around. We were only engaging ourselves. Say to them, was it Allah and His verses and His messenger that you were belittling? Make no excuse. Do not give an excuse. You have committed kufr after your belief. Meaning, you were judged as believers at one point, but because of what you just did, you've invalidated your belief and you are judged as kuffar, because you said something that contradicted the religion. And there are other verses and other proofs. And this verse teaches us that if a person utters words of kufr, of blasphemy, such as mocking Allah, or mocking the verses of Allah, يعني the verses of the Quran, or mocking or belittling the messenger of Allah. So, mocking or belittling. Then this person has blasphemed after having been a believer, because of what they said. Thus, this person must return to Al-Islam by uttering the two testifications. لا إله إلا الله Muhammad Rasulullah, after renouncing the kufr, after knowing that what they did or what they said took them out of Al-Islam, and they renounce it. They say the Shahada with the intention of embracing Al-Islam, and they are judged as Muslims, as believers again. And it does not benefit him to say, but I was only joking. Or to say, I was just playing around. I was just laughing. I was having a laugh. Or, I wasn't being serious when I said that. This doesn't benefit him, and it's not an excuse. Allah the Exalted said, لا تعتذروا, do not give any excuse for what you did. you have been judged, you are judged as kuffar after having been judged as Muslims, as believers. I mean, the verse is very clear. لا تعتذروا قد كفرتم بعد إيمانكم. You committed kufr after your belief. It's very clear. For this reason, brothers and sisters, let every person be careful to guard his tongue against the kufr, and especially the verbal kufr, which unfortunately is widespread today amongst many people. Be careful what you read. Be careful what you watch. And the more knowledge a person has, the more religious knowledge, the stronger they would be against these evils that exist. Some people, may Allah protect us, they cuss Allah, or they cuss the Messenger of Allah, or they cuss the religion of Islam, or they cuss the Quran, or the angels. Some of them, may Allah protect us, when they are angry, they curse or cuss some of the angels. This is all kufr. It takes the person out of Islam. For example, some people, when a relative of theirs dies, they would cuss the angel of death, 𝗳𝗿𝗃𝗁, this honorable angel that has a high rank. He has a very high rank. And he didn't do anything unjust. He is fulfilling the order of Allah. He is fulfilling the order of Allah. Allah said about the angels, لا يعصون الله ما أمرهم ويفعلون ما يؤمرون, that they do not disobey Allah Ta'ala in what Allah orders them to do. Rather, they do what they're ordered. And Allah the Exalted also said in the Quran, in Surah Al-Baqarah, من كان عدوا لله وملائكته ورسله وجبريل وميكال فإن الله عدو للكافرين. It means whoever was an enemy of Allah and His angels and His messengers, and especially of these two angels, Gabriel, Jibril, and Michael, Mikael or Mikal, Allah said what means, then surely Allah is an enemy to the kuffar, to the unbelievers or the disbelievers. So this proves that Allah takes them as enemies because of their blasphemy, because of their kufr, and that taking the angels as enemies is kufr in itself, like taking the prophets as enemies. So whoever takes these creations of Allah, the prophets or the angels, as enemies, Allah takes that person as an enemy. Yani this person is in a horrible state. A'udhu billah. They will be destroyed. They will be demolished. So brothers and sisters, the speech which contains legitimizing a matter which is forbidden, yani saying about something which is forbidden that it is halal. So the speech that contains legitimizing a matter which is forbidden by consensus, this matter is haram by consensus, from what is known to that person, yani it's not hidden from them, they know the judgment. Like those who say, وَالْعِيَاذُ بِاللَّهِ, while knowing that the religion prohibits it, They say, we see that alcohol is permissible. So they deem it halal, they deem it lawful, and they contradict the religion. Some of them may even deem fornication permissible, as zina, a'udhu-billah. Some of them, they deem stealing as lawful. And some of them, they deem other sins as being halal. Sins that are known by both the knowledgeable and the ignorant Muslims to be forbidden. Yani both the knowledgeable Muslims and the ignorant Muslims, they know that those things are haram. So these are all things that would take the person out of Islam. If someone knew that the religion says about something, that it is halal, and that person said about it that it is haram, or the other way around, if something was haram, and that person said about it that it was halal, then this is not a Muslim, the one who does that. This is not a Muslim. He would have apostatized from the religion. So the one who speaks and actively belies the religion, contradicts the religion, while knowing, then his judgment in the religion of Allah is that he has fallen into the verbal kufr. So, my advice to myself and you, my advice to myself and you is let each of us monitor our tongue and not speak about something except after knowing that it is permissible for us to speak about it. Otherwise, the matter is as Al-Imam Al-Ghazali said. He said about the tongue, جِرْمُهُ صَغِيرٌ وَجُرْمُهُ كَبِيرٌ, which means its size is small, but its crime is grave. That means that the crime that may be committed by the tongue could be an enormous sin and a very dangerous sin. And it may even lead to al-kufr. May Allah protect us. So whoever fell into any type of kufr, as we mentioned, the way to return to al-Islam is by uttering the two testifications of faith, أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. And of course they would have renounced the blasphemy after knowing that this case or this statement is one that is blasphemous, or that belief or this action is one that takes them out of al-Islam. If a person knows that a matter that occurred from him is kufr, then he utters the testifications to rid himself of that kufr. And these testifications, they benefit him and they free him from that kufr. That's how he gets rid of it. By this, he would have returned to al-Islam. And this is the way that one returns to al-Islam. One does not return to al-Islam by saying astaghfirullah. No. Subhanallah. It occurs from some people today that they insult Allah, they cuss Allah, a'udhu billah, and then they say astaghfirullah, astaghfirullah, a'udhu billah. And this statement, astaghfirullah, it only benefits a Muslim. It doesn't benefit the kafir, the one who fell into a type of kufr. Because we know that Allah does not forgive the kafir for any sin as long as they are upon kufr. And so in order for that person to say this statement, which means, oh Allah forgive me, they must enter into al-Islam first. And so the scholars, they clarified and they stressed this. If someone fell into a type of kufr, to embrace al-Islam, to get back into al-Islam, they have to utter the 2 testifications to enter into al-Islam. Otherwise, they would remain upon kufr. And if they said astaghfirullah, that will not benefit them. In fact, they will increase in kufr, because saying this statement in that situation belies their religion as well. Now, if they embrace al-Islam, then they say astaghfirullah, they will benefit. Insha'Allah ta'ala, they will benefit and be rewarded for that, or forgiven. And we will stop here, insha'Allah ta'ala. I ask Allah ta'ala to accept our good deeds and to protect us all from al-kufr, Allahumma ameen, and from the major sins, all of them, and everything that leads to the major sins, Allahumma ameen. I ask Allah ta'ala to grant us all an honorable end upon al-Islam and upon piety, and for us to die as complete Muslims, complete believers. Allahumma ameen. Subhanaka Allahumma wa bihamdik. Ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.